What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So Google Stadia cannot stay out of the news. I mean, things keep popping up, I assume, as people are getting their Google Stadia controller and Chromecast, because now we're having some pretty serious issues with the Chromecast Ultra. We'll go over that, because, yeah, literally it's almost on fire. It's something else with all these issues we're running into here. And also, it looks like Amazon may be joining the game streaming race next year, which we'll have to talk a bit about, because that could have quite a few implications and kind of some strategy that they may pursue. And then also, Nintendo, the eShop, and sales. Well, Black Friday is coming up, and Nintendo appears to be joining in on the action here. And we're going to talk about some of the deals that we're seeing currently in Europe, but it should most likely some of it spill over to other regions, including the US. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to like button. It does help out. And get subscribed so you can stay updated on all the gaming news going on in the gaming world. We're going to start today with a bit of an update from a story yesterday, which was about Pokemon, because remember we talked about Pokemon launching in Japan, about 3 days worth of tracking, and it did 1.36 million. Yeah, that's quite a few games to sell. We'll say that. However, Nintendo decided to release a statement that said they have sold through, that's right, sold through to customers 6 million copies in its first 3 days. It's not even the full week, it's just the first 3 days, basically. That is insane. That eclipses Pokemon X and Y, which did about 4 million, for some reference there. And of course, again, these are $60 games rather than the $40 games that they were selling with the 3DS, which makes this the highest grossing Pokemon launch so far. This is it. This game has been doing tremendously well, and it continues to roll. In fact, they also told us that just in Japan alone, we had seen Famitsu report 1.36 million, which includes all physical, no digital in there. They do count the vouchers and the cards, but it was 2 million units just in Japan, which also gives us an idea about kind of the split with digital and physical now. The Switch really is leaning into that digital kind of area. And I mean, if it makes sense, because you don't want to kind of cart around all of your carts, right? You'd rather just have everything digitally. So I at least understand why it's so compelling to have everything digital on the Switch for traveling when it's portable. But 6 million units with Pokemon, here's the deal. I think it's going to be close to 17, 18 million when we hear about it at the end of January going through the holidays. That's insane. Oh, and you know, we keep seeing these companies be nice to each other. Specifically, we see Microsoft being nice to everyone, right? I mean, they just want to be everyone's friend, which kind of works out at times when you see things like Cuphead go to the Switch, and you see new Super Lucky's Tale, and that's great, right? Crossplay. But one company that definitely still remembers the console wars and loves to do all kinds of stuff to mess with their competition is Sony, because they put out this trailer that really talked about how remote play can be played all over the place, right? You don't just have to use a Pixel phone to stream your games to your device. You don't have to use a Chromecast Ultra. You can use everything. You can even use, wait a minute, is that a Vita? What's that? They have a Vita in there? That's the first time I've really seen Sony talk about the Vita in quite a while, and it's in a remote play trailer. This is something Sony's been doing for a little while now. Remember Gamescom? Everyone was talking about other systems and companies that actually attended Gamescom. Sony really didn't do much there, but they bought Insomniac, and that's all everyone talked about was Sony buying Insomniac. They, of course, kind of pushed out these PlayStation 5 articles. Even during E3, some of the most watched stuff was for Death Stranding that Sony decided to put out there along with Kojima like a week or two before E3. Sony still remembers the console wars, I think, and I like the old days, and I think they still like to tap into those roots occasionally when they do things like this. Google Stadia is struggling? Well, hey, I mean, if you have a PlayStation 4, here's all the stuff you can do remote play on. Oh, and do you remember Alien Isolation? We saw that in the sizzle reel where they showed off all of these games for the Switch during Nintendo Direct, but it kind of went absent for a while. Feral Interactive occasionally would tweet about it. Well, we have a solid release date, some more information including file size, which appears to be around 17 gigabytes. It'll have all the downloadable content, and they're also adding in gyro support for aiming, and it's coming out December 5th. So they're going to make it like just inside this year, because generally when you get like after the first week or two, it starts to get too close to Christmas to put your game out there because people already decided on what they're getting, or they may have already shopped early. Now this, I think this is just going to be a digital game. It might be physical. That's something else I'm trying to figure out, but December 5th, it'll at least be up on the eShop. You can check it out, and it's good to hear at least a release date on it, because I was almost thinking this game was going to get delayed next year, but Feral kept saying definitely this year, and here we are now, December 5th. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're gonna start with this eShop sale that is kind of starting to pop up in different regions now. We got our first real look in Europe, for Nintendo Europe, for what they're gonna do on the eShop during kind of the holidays where you have Black Friday and Cyber Monday. These deals are gonna be running from now until December 1st. So if you're in Europe, you can fire up the eShop now, and you should be able to see a lot of these discounted in, I guess, the deals section, or if you just go to the game, it should be there with that discount applied. There's a lot. There's like over 150 games, and they're not all like little games. There are some pretty serious first-party and third-party games on here. So we're just gonna just take a look at the long list here that we'll just kind of go through as we're kind of talking about them. Even like Breath of the Wild is 30% off. Cadence of Hyrule, 30% off. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 also 30% off. Skyrim's gonna be half off. Dark Souls Remastered's 40% off. Mario Odyssey 30% off. One of the biggest cuts that I saw was Dragon Ball FighterZ at 70% off. You also have things like Ni no Kuni at 33% off, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate at 50% off, Yooka-Laylee is going to be 66% off. There is a lot of good stuff. Octopath Traveler is 40% off, Doom is half off. I mean, seriously, the list just goes on and on and on. A ton of stuff here, especially if you were just looking to kind of fill out the backlog even further. Even Mega Man X Legacy Collection 2 or Collection 1 is half off, Mega Man 11's half off. It is an insane sale. There's so much stuff here that is cut off, and I love that. I love seeing these digital sales because we just talked about how digital is really taking over for the Switch right now, and I get it, right? The bigger SD cards are getting cheaper as we go along. I think I saw the 400 gigabyte card the other day for like $50. It's getting pretty cheap now, so it makes sense. It's easier to take around with you, and yeah, I'm gonna look at this list and probably pick some out for the backlog to get digital just to have on the Switch that maybe I missed out on digitally. Again, some good ones on that list. Dragon Ball FighterZ is 70% off. Was a bit surprising, and seeing so many first-party titles on sale, it's going to take you a while to search through that list, but I'll leave it down below. Keep in mind, this is only for Europe right now, but I do expect quite a few of these deals to also kind of make the move over to other regions. We're just waiting at this point for Nintendo of America to announce it. Could announce it today, could announce it Monday. So hopefully even by the time you're seeing this video, you could maybe go check Twitter and they're already talking about it. We'll see, but exciting stuff to see this much on sale for the holiday, going all the way to December 1st. So even if I guess you're looking to shop around a bit more on Black Friday, you'll still have some time after Black Friday. If you didn't get the game that you wanted, you can check it out here on the eShop digitally. Next up, let's talk about Amazon and another game streaming service. Now, we're currently watching Stadia really struggle. Out of the gate, it's having a hard time. It's straight up, it is. And it makes me wonder if Amazon could do it better, because they are right now observing some of the problems that Stadia is having. Things like launching without a subscription service and not even really tying it into YouTube immediately. Stadia feels pretty rushed. Again, we're going to talk a bit more about that later on with the Chromecast Ultra, but Amazon could be watching this and saying, okay, well, we'll do this, we'll do that. Okay, yeah, we'll avoid this. Because it looks like they're going to be trying this out next year. Now, this was per CNET, who had several sources familiar with the matter, that Amazon will be announcing next year that they will be entering the game streaming, I guess, landscape, as we'll call it, competition at this point. Because that means we would have Microsoft, Sony, and Google, and then Amazon kind of fighting it out. Now, really, the three companies that have the servers to do this would be Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. And that makes sense why Sony kind of had that handshake agreement with Microsoft to kind of, I guess, explore the opportunity for game streaming for Sony to use Microsoft servers and their data centers. It makes sense for Sony because they're not going to build that. You know how long that took Microsoft and Amazon and even Google to build up to where they are now? It took a long time. It took a lot of money, but they do things other than game streaming, right? So they have other reasons to have the server power that they do, whereas Sony, they don't really need servers like that, so they'd rather just sign on with someone else, and they chose Microsoft, and that's kind of where they're going, I guess, into next generation. So Amazon coming in means that they would most likely, again, according to CNET, they would tie it into things like Twitch, and they'll probably tie it into Amazon Prime. In fact, how you have like Prime Video, I bet you'd have like Prime Games, and it would be their own subscription service if you are already subscribed to Amazon Prime, like a lot of people tend to be. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have Amazon Prime, whether it's for shipping or the just video in general. So if they can come together, make that work so that Amazon Prime And then they also have their Amazon Prime Video, Amazon Prime Games. Twitch is integrated, similar to what YouTube is trying to do with where you're watching your favorite streamer and then maybe you can jump in with them, or they can queue up a bunch of people and into a fighting game or maybe a Call of Duty or something. There's a lot of stuff they could do, and maybe they can do it better than what really we're seeing Google attempt to do right now, which is, again, feels very rushed. And it makes you wonder, Google, I thought, was rushing to market because Microsoft seemed to be off and running with xCloud. I wonder if they got word that Amazon was also about to jump in next year and they just wanted to beat them to market. I mean, I think at this point, Amazon would really compete more with Microsoft because Google's just, they can't get out of their own way. So if Amazon could just have an okay launch, it's already better than what's going on with Stadia. Next up, let's talk about Half-Life Alyx. If you have not watched the trailer for this, you should go check it out. It's less than 2 minutes long, but it looked good. It looked really, really good. And it's a VR game, which will disappoint, I think, quite a number of people. But when you start watching that trailer and some of the gameplay they're showing, this is like the next level for VR. Like, you can tell when they said flagship VR game, they were not messing around. Yes, they sell the Index, and that's probably what they're trying to push, because I believe this game is just going to be basically free for anyone who has an Index, it seems. But from what they were showing, it looked amazing. Like, they showed the hand tracking, so of course you have kind of floating hands, but when you're moving your hands around, you're knocking stuff over, trying to grab bullets, for example. The visuals of it looked great. It really, really did. It looked super immersive. Of course, you have the different creatures jumping at your face, and it looked great. I mean, it's Half-Life. A lot of people were excited when they heard that Valve was going to do something Half-Life related, even though it was VR. Look, we need something big for VR to really start pushing it forward. I am glad to see Valve do this, just because VR kind of needs it. I was a bit surprised to see that it wasn't for PlayStation VR. It is for Vive, Oculus, and of course the Index, basically anything that works with Steam VR. So keep that in mind if you're kind of getting up to next year, because this is going to be coming out March 2020. Maybe take a look around for a VR headset that would work with that. Depending on, I guess, what your budget is, maybe look at the Oculus somewhere in there, because that might end up being the cheaper entry in right now. The Index is like $1,000. The Vive can get kind of pricey as well. That's why I was hoping that they might be able to get it onto the PlayStation VR, because that's the largest install base right now for just VR in general, is that. But I like what I saw there. Jeff Keighley apparently has spent quite a bit of time with this game during its development, and he said his one playthrough of it took about 15 hours. So this isn't like a tech demo or like a quick couple of hours. This is a full-length game in VR with a bunch of really cool ideas for VR. So I'm excited to see it. I don't get excited for a lot of VR games that get shown off, like to the point where I'm like, I gotta have it. This is one of them. This is it. Half-Life Alyx, I think, is going to be like the big VR game, especially next year, but then going on for a couple of years as well, until maybe another company comes along and topples it. But this is exactly what VR needed, and I'm at least glad to see Valve take a shot at it. Oh, also the price, it's $59.99. Again, it looks like for reports, there's going to be, the Index would be free if you have the Index, but that's a $1,000 headset. But yes, this will be a full-priced game. I know a lot of people are used to VR games being less in price, but this isn't a tech demo. Like I said, they are taking a shot at a full-fledged VR game, and the Half-Life universe takes place between Half-Life 1 and 2. I'm still excited. $60 though, let me know if that's too much for a VR game like this. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Google Stadia and overheating Chromecast Ultras, because this is a thing apparently. I was shocked. I took a look at my Stadia, I opened it up and checked out the controller. That's more or less what I'm interested in, because it came with a Chromecast Ultra. That's a piece of hardware that's already existed and people have been using it. So when I saw the controller, that's what I was mostly playing around with. But people are reporting that the Chromecast is actually overheating and shutting off. And I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I know it's passively cooled, but their whole thing is that it's all streaming, right? So you shouldn't have to worry about your hardware. Well, now people have to worry about their hardware. And I looked into it, and this isn't new. Apparently this has been happening where if you're streaming 4K Netflix, it also shuts down because it overheats. It gets so hot, people were saying that it was like almost like burning to the touch. It gets very, very hot, like way hotter than anything like that should. It's the part that's like a little puck, and it plugs into your HDMI port and then plugs into power. And this is, once again, another thing to me that makes it look like Google rushed this, because if we'd already seen reports of this thing overheating and shutting off just for like Netflix at 4K, I know the idea of streaming a game is very similar to streaming video, right? But there are inputs that go back and forth. The whole point of that is that the controller takes care of that by syncing to your wireless router, and then it sends the inputs back and forth on its own, and the system doesn't have to worry about that. But what's the point in doing this if your system, the little puck, the game streaming puck, is overheating and shutting off? Like, why wouldn't you just play it on a system it'd probably be loud? I mean, the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X can get kind of loud, but they don't overheat. Here we are now with the Chromecast Ultra, and it just catches on fire. Yeah, to me, it just looks like Google was looking around and they said, well, the Chromecast Ultra will work for streaming. Let's get that. Put that in the box, put the controller in, send it out. We're good. They didn't design anything specifically for this. If they had gone back to the drawing board, made up something similar to the Chromecast Ultra, but maybe it was a little more robust and able to handle higher temperatures and loads, that would have made more sense. But again, they grabbed something that was ready, it was off the shelf, and they just threw it in the box. Again, feels a bit like a rushed product right now. You know what? I'm going to have to take this thing apart, and we're going to see why it's overheating and what's going on. Hey, maybe we can even fix it. We'll see. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day. As you're seeing here, this is from Alan Morton saying, where are these new PlayStation Vitas? I really want one. Here, the PlayStation Vita right now sells 20 to 30 in Japan, and I think that's just loose stock that's been laying around on retailer shelves. But if you come across a brand new Vita, even if it's, it's like $200, buy it now. I'm telling you, these things are already shooting up in price brand new, and if you can get one and just leave it sealed, put it in a closet, I think in like 10 years, that's going to be somewhat valuable, significantly more than what you paid the $200 for a brand new one. Although the PlayStation Vita has some really good games. I keep looking at like through the library. There are some good ones in there. So maybe you want to open it and play it. But if you can just get one and leave it sealed for collectors, yeah, that's going to be something that's going to be rare going forward because they're already jumping up in price online. So if you were watching this and you're in Japan, go out looking for one. Because if you can find it, you got yourself a really good collector's piece there. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, the like button really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's the eShop sales. You're going to keep an eye out to see when they announce them for other regions as well. It still might be worth taking a look through Nintendo Europe's kind of sales, see what they have, just so we can kind of get ready for when it goes elsewhere and it gets announced. Also, what do you think about Amazon entering the game streaming landscape next year? Do we have too many game streaming services? Is that happening? Or do we need at least several of them to come together so that at least one of them turns out to be good? And then what do you think about Half-Life Alyx? I know it's a VR game, but is this a VR game you're looking at and you're like, I might need a headset? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.